Good morning, everybody. Welcome back after the weekend to this week's first daily meditation session. Lovely to see you all logging in and saying hello in the sidebar as ever. It's just really nice to see familiar names coming up every day. So welcome. We're back this week with Kairajul Lingo. As some of you might have heard, we were hoping that Martin would be back with us towards the end of this week, but unfortunately it doesn't look like that's going to happen. He's still feeling quite weak, and so he's told us that he probably won't be teaching again this week. So Kairajul has kindly agreed to lead this week's sessions for the whole week. So we will be here for an hour again, starting off with a contemplation, going into a guided meditation, and then at the end there will be time as ever for questions and answers. If you like, you are very welcome to come on screen and ask your question in person. If you'd like to come on screen, just type a message in the sidebar there and I can bring you on. Alternatively, if you would like to put a question in writing, feel free to do that. You can just use the ask a question box right underneath the video screen. You see there, it says ask a question. Just click on that and that will pop up and you can put your question in there. Just a quick word about Dana as well. We do rely on your donations to be able to do this. If people didn't kindly donate and weren't as generous as they were, we wouldn't be able to do this at all, because we don't get money from anywhere else and we do have ongoing costs that we need to meet. We would be really, really grateful, therefore, if you're able to donate, if you could do so. Again, it's easy. There's a button right underneath the video screen. Or it says offer donation /Dana there, and if you click on that, that will pop up and give you a few different options for how you can donate. So yeah, if you value this, if you value Kairajul's teachings, we'd be really, really grateful if you could give, even if it's just a really small amount. Everything all adds up, and it really does make a difference. And of course, if you don't have the means to donate, that's absolutely fine as well. And a little, half of what you donate will go to Kairajul to support her as well. So I think that's enough from me. I'm going to take myself off and hand over to Kairajul.
Thank you, Caroline. And good morning, good afternoon. Greetings to you all. Welcome back from the weekend. And yes, I'm happy to get the chance to be with you all for another week. Today, I want to speak and reflect with you on thoughts and how we can be skillful with our thinking. So, if any of you are like me, my thoughts start rolling as soon as I wake up, and they stay rolling most of the day until it's time to sleep. And even when we dream, that active part of the mind that creates thoughts is operating. So it's important to understand how our minds work with our thoughts, because they're turned on most of our waking hours. So this is from the Dhammapada. It says, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." And skipping down to a part further down in this verse, your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. But once mastered, no one can help you as much, not even your father or your mother. So when we master our minds, when we learn how to be skillful with our thoughts, no one can help us as much as a tamed mind. And nothing can hurt us as much as our thoughts unguarded. That's from the Buddha. So it's possible to become aware of the process of thinking. First of all, we want to hold awareness of our thoughts in the sense of this is human, this is natural. What a mind does is produce thoughts. So there's nothing wrong with our thoughts, but we do want to be aware of them, right? So, because if we aren't mindful of them, then they have a way of taking over and we become identified with them, and that's when a lot of suffering can start. But the point of being aware of them isn't necessarily to stop them or to fight them. That actually makes it worse. If we resist them, then we create a lot more tension and stress. So Suzuki Roshi, the Japanese Zen master, said, "Don't be disturbed by your thoughts." Right? So we can learn to befriend them. This is from Eckhart Tolle, the kind of secular teacher. He says, when you become aware of silence, immediately there is that state of inner still alertness. You are present. You have stepped out of thousands of years of collective human conditioning. So I like this quote because it gives us, it helps us to be compassionate with ourselves, that we are coming, influenced by thousands of years of human conditioning where generations and generations of humans have, been imprisoned by their thoughts. And that's the world that they've created and that we've inherited and that we're continuing to create. But every time we find a place of stillness where we're not dominated by our thinking, where we're present, and thoughts can still be there. That's the thing. We can be present and thoughts can still be there, but we notice that the thoughts are happening versus not noticing that they're happening and identifying, becoming our thoughts, thinking we are our thoughts, right? So that being present, being still, gives us enormous freedom, and it helps us step out of this stream that has just got so much, pressure and the ability to pull us in it. It takes practice, but we can do it. Every time we do it, it gets easier to step out of this thousands of years of human conditioning. So another quote from Eckhart Tolle about thoughts. He says, "Most people spend their entire life imprisoned within the confines of their own thoughts. They never go beyond a narrow, mind-made, personalized sense of self that is conditioned by the past. In you, as in each human being, there is a dimension of consciousness far deeper than thought. It is the very essence of who you are. Finding that dimension frees you and the world from the suffering you inflict on yourself and others when the mind-made little me is all you know and runs your life. Love, joy, creative expansion, and lasting inner peace cannot come into your life except through that unconditioned dimension of consciousness." So, like Suzuki Roshi, he encourages us not to take our thoughts too seriously. So when we turn toward our thinking to notice how it works, we can learn a lot about it. Some thoughts turn into or feed emotional mind states, emotions, and they want us to identify with them. They want us to keep thinking them. So a major insight from these teachings I mentioned earlier, the 4 nutriments, is that everything that arises needs food to survive. And nothing can survive without food. And if we can find the root, the source of the nourishment of something that we don't want to be manifesting, then if we cut that source of nourishment, that thing will have to fade away. And then that's liberation. So depression, anxiety, loneliness, grief, they're all nourished by a particular kind of food. And if we can figure out what that is and stop feeding it, those kinds of suffering will have to, retract, and they won't be able to manifest anymore if they're not getting fed. So when we notice how our thoughts work, we get insight into their nature. So how one thought stirs another thought and another, and pretty soon, a very innocent, mild reflection on the color of the light green in early spring has led from stream of consciousness, one thought to the next thought to the next, and suddenly we're down in some very dark memory or painful place or full of reproach for someone, that has done us wrong, or catastrophizing about something that could happen in the future. So it's important when we come to the end of a string of thoughts to pause and just notice what just happened. And if we can, kind of trace back the string of thoughts. So we can do this not only in our meditation, but also in our daily lives. We can notice what is arising in our mind. We can use the noting practice to say thinking. When thinking is there, as we're meditating, thinking. So like thoughts are arising, but instead of being identified with them, there's some piece of us, some part of us that's aware of the thoughts. So we're not 100% on the thoughts. So it's like seeing clouds passing through the sky. Some part of us is aware, oh, those are clouds. Oh, those are thoughts, right? So we're not pushing them away, but we're also not jumping on board. And in our daily lives too, when we notice thinking happening, we can notice, oh, those are thinking, and then, as soon as we do that, as soon as we are aware thinking's happening, we have a chance to question if we need to believe them or not. But if we're identified with them, we don't have that opportunity to check that out. And this is important because thoughts can represent deeper beliefs that can be just below our level of awareness. So, and it's the things that are just below our awareness that actually have the biggest impact on us. So there might be the thought, I just don't have energy to take on this new project or challenge, right? And that could be an accurate assessment of your, time and ability. But it could also be, if it's not examined, it could also be a a reflection of a deeper belief that isn't in our awareness, that maybe I don't have what it takes to be and manifest my full self. Some self-doubt, self-judgment, or comparing ourselves, some belief, I'm not as good as, these other people out there, so I'm not going to try. Or maybe I'm not worthy of really shining and being fully seen. So these could be beliefs that are under the surface, and that thought that arises is a manifestation of that deeper belief, and we're not aware of the link there. So these deeper beliefs that are unexamined produce thoughts that seem reasonable enough, and we identify with them, but we don't understand or recognize, these deeper orientations to life that they represent. And those can really keep us from being free. So as we begin to notice the thinking, we can see the dynamics that are below them and start to get a sense of these habits with a little more clarity. And then that helps us to shift the habits. So let's do a meditation where we are going to pay attention and not try to, move away from our thoughts, but actually move toward them, get interested in them. So finding a comfortable way to be in your body. Feeling the whole space your body is taking up. Feeling the place your body is contacting with whatever you're sitting or lying or standing on. It's really allowing your body to be at rest. To settle, to arrive fully here. Sometimes it can help to connect with the breathing, taking some deeper breaths 2 or 3 times, letting the breath come all the way down to the belly. And just breathing normally now. Noticing what's here in your body, in your breathing, as you come into stillness. So we'll begin with bringing attention to sound. Noticing the sounds in your environment. The sound of my voice. Whatever noises, sounds may be in your environment, inside or outside of where you are. There may be sounds that are constant background noises. There may be sounds that come and go. Noticing how the sounds arise, stay for some time, and then pass away. We don't have to do anything to be aware of these sounds. The hearing just happens all by itself. So opening to how the sounds arise and pass away, and how on its own awareness of sounds arises. There's nothing you need to do or make happen. You don't have to get up and go find a sound, right? You don't have to strain to catch a sound. It just comes into your awareness very naturally with no effort. Let yourself rest back and open to this play of sounds, to this soundscape. So we'll have the same attitude now as we become aware of our thinking. Just as we allowed sounds to arise and pass, we'll be aware of thoughts as they arise and then go. And there's nothing that we have to do. You don't need to get rid of them. Only noticing how they come, stay for some time, and then go. Don't be disturbed by your thoughts, Suzuki Roshi said. They are not the truth. They are what every mind does. If you have a mind, it's going to produce thoughts, just like an air conditioner produces cool air. So let your mind be. Let the thoughts be. Just bringing awareness to the thoughtscape, to the play of thoughts arising and passing in the mind. So in this practice, we're turning toward our thoughts instead of away from them, bringing interest and curiosity. We can see ourselves as like a cat sitting very alert outside of a mouse hole. And our goal is to notice the first thought that will come out of this mouse hole. Not to pounce on it, but to notice it. So from starting now, observing to see what's the very first thought that's going to arise in your mind. seeing if you can be attentive to notice it, to catch this first thought, and then checking out what happens to it when you bring awareness to this thought. What arises? What does it do? Where does it go? It's a bit of a game we can play with ourselves. Now what's the next thought? Can I be really attentive and catch it as soon as it arises? And then notice what happens to it. Another way we could bring attention to our thoughts is to notice if the thoughts are about the past or the future or something in the present. There's no need to think about it any further than that. If you're not sure, you can note not sure. For a little while, bring awareness to your thinking and just label in your mind past if a thought is about the past, future if it's about the future, present if it is to do with the present. Now we can notice the quality of our thoughts. as if they're like cars driving down the road and we're sitting on the sidewalk or somewhere a distance from the road. So are there a lot of thoughts coming one after another, like a lot of traffic on the road, or is there less traffic on the road today? Is there less thoughts that come through the mind, or are they quite crowded? Are the thoughts drifty and light, or are they more intense, sticking around, honking horns? So noticing the quality of the thoughts that are coming through the mind. And if there are more intense or difficult thoughts, just checking in to see if there's some emotion underneath that you can be aware of, or some belief that's operating under the radar. So this isn't about analyzing, but noticing if, when you bring attention to thoughts, if that leads you to any awareness about what might be feeding them, particularly if they're sticky. Another aspect of noticing the quality of our thoughts is noticing if they're coming fast or moving more slowly. And then maybe a lot of traffic, a lot of thoughts all at once. And if you do notice spaces between the thoughts, what is the space like in between thoughts? How does that feel in your body and your mind? That gap between thinking. So again, we're not trying to make a gap happen, and we're not getting attached to that stillness that might be there, but only noticing if it is there, and if so, what it's like. being present with the flow of thoughts. Including gaps between thoughts. So the invitation is to sit on the side of the road and watch the thoughts come and go, not getting into any of the vehicles, also not trying to direct traffic or slow down or speed up anything, but letting it all be, observing, noticing, curiously attending to the flow of thoughts in the mind. Without trying to control or make anything happen. Being aware but also relaxed, at ease. So we allow our mind to be like the sky, noticing the clouds floating in and floating out, coming and going. But in the background is the sky, vast and untroubled by the coming and going of the clouds. You are more than your thoughts. You're bigger, vaster than your thoughts. As Walt Whitman wrote, I am vast. I contain multitudes. Allowing yourself to rest in this feeling of the spaciousness, the vastness of your mind. That can be untroubled by your thinking, even as it's aware of the comings and goings of thoughts. Without a judgment, without a preference. I am vast. I contain multitudes. Letting your mind be vast like the sky. Resting back in that vastness. Beautiful, dear friends. We've come to the end of this practice. So take your time to shift into connecting again through the screen. Taking some deep breaths, or giving your body a stretch. Gently reconnecting through the eyes. And you're welcome to share your experience in the chat if you wish, or to ask a question in a written form, or to come on screen and ask a question. Thank you for your sharing on the chat. It's lovely to read. And this is a question from Nigel. That was a great experience. So much traffic on the road. So much easier when I don't jump in and drive the cars. Can you speak a little of the sneaky thoughts that lurk in the background, not easily identified, but tend to be very hard to shift? Yes, wonderful question. So there can be, grooves that our mind gets in that we fall into really easily, things that maybe those who raised us were thinking and said out loud, and we started to think without even knowing, or just things that we learned and started to get in the habit of thinking, and we don't even know we've gotten into that groove, but it's operating before we've even seen it come. It's almost like it comes from behind and suddenly it's there. We didn't see it. So that's definitely a phenomenon. And it's likely connected to other things, not just a thought, but it's likely connected to some belief or some emotion, right? A sneaky thought, like for me, as I think of it, might be, if I've done something that I regret, there might be this voice, how could you do that? This sense of judgment that I don't even notice it's there, but I've just become that judgment arising, that reproach. it could be different things for each of us, right? Those particular thoughts that suddenly, when they're there, we're off and away. So what to me the practice helps with is to notice, it doesn't matter at what point we figure out that we've done that, but as we apply the practice, we'll come closer and closer and closer to the beginning of that thought. It might be that for a long time we only recognize it once it's taken us on this whole journey and we're exhausted. We've gone on the roller coaster ride and we're like, we get off, our hair is all splayed in the wind. But we've got off, right? And so then maybe the next time we could get off a little earlier, and the next time a little earlier, a little earlier. What helps is to notice, to bring awareness into the body at whatever point we catch it, to notice how is it feeling in the body and what emotion might be running that thought, sort of powering the motor for the thought. And being really compassionate if it keeps arising and we don't notice it till we've already identified with it. But the more we bring it to light with compassion, with kindness, with friendliness, and not judging it, the easier it will be to catch it, to understand it closer to where it begins and also where its roots are. But it might be also a helpful thing to actually write it down. If you've identified what that sneaky thought is, to write it down and to journal about, I wonder, how did that thought come to be so sticky in my mind? Where did that come from? What time in my life might have given birth to that pattern of thinking? Maybe it was a certain thing that happened in school when I was young, or maybe it was, a pattern I started to have in my young adult life, and that's when that thought started to come. So just kind of tracing, doing a little, family tree lineage of like, where did that come from? Or how did that, what is feeding that? What's nourishing that? So I hope that's helpful, Nigel. And this is I had a very strong image of a Monty Python type head with lid open and thoughts floating up into the air while I watched. Cool. Yeah, I think there's many helpful metaphors and images that we'll come up with that help us to kind of take more of the noticing role, the witnessing role. So, and there's anything we can do to bring in humor, like Monty Python type head, that also helps us not take these things so seriously. So I appreciate the influx of something not so serious. So this is from Clive. I noticed I had a nourishing thought. I wondered whether it is okay to stay with a good, nourishing thought. I wanted to believe it was true and was unsure whether to say to myself, it's not true. It's just a thought. I get that I want to let unhelpful thoughts go, but what about helpful, beautiful thoughts? Is it unskillful to identify with them as well? Great question, Clive. I think, first of all, it's really good practice to notice when a thought is unhelpful and when a thought is actually nourishing, because there are definitely many kinds of helpful, wholesome, nourishing thoughts. And it is important to see that our mind can produce really helpful things by way of thinking as well. So I think noticing that this is a helpful thought, that this is, a thought that brings connection or that brings appreciation, or maybe it's a thought that's connected to an insight into something we haven't understood deeply before. I mean, we don't want to attach to them, but we also want to allow ourselves to be nourished by them. So I think, we can notice, just as part of the exercise, we noticed, oh, that's a thought from the past, that's a thought about the future, this is a thought about the present. We can note, oh, this is a nourishing, wholesome thought. Oh, this is a thought that, carries some judgment, some suffering. Oh, this is maybe a neutral thought. So you can also note, on the helpfulness scale, how helpful thoughts are. But I think in any case, whether they're helpful, neutral, or unhelpful, we don't want to try to grab them and keep them. We just want to let them do what they do. And if a thought wants to stay around, we can let it stay around. But if it wants to go on and another thought comes, we can let it go on. But the thing about wholesome, nourishing thoughts is they'll often pull up other wholesome, nourishing things from our mind. And so that's good to notice also. So it's good to let ourselves be nourished by them and whatever else they bring, to notice that process, but not necessarily, try to keep them if that involves some kind of effort or if it's out of some attachment. So, yeah. Just to say, that whole practice of saying this isn't true, it's just a thought. If you get caught up in that, you don't need to use that. Like if you get confused, like, is it true? Maybe it is true. Just let that part go. You don't have to question the truth of your thoughts, but it is important to notice that they are thoughts. So some thoughts can be, more reliable than others, but still everything is a thought. So if that's helpful, Clive, appreciate the question. So this is from Tanya. I frequently find myself trying to resist or push away emotionally charged thoughts. When this happens, I feel hijacked and unstable, difficult to find detachment, a sense of me and thinking. Yeah, thank you, Tanya. So I would invite you to play with, what would it be like when an emotionally charged thought arises, to allow it to be there, to give it space. Maybe it's like, if we use the traffic analogy, maybe it's like a really big, loud truck that's honking its horn and it's moving really slowly down the street. So it's a very annoying honking sound. So you want it to go away because it's painful, it's annoying, it's loud, it's disturbing. But what would it be like to not say in your mind, this is wrong, this shouldn't be here, I don't want this thought, this emotionally charged thought? What if it was like, okay, here it is, how can I make space for it? How can I understand it? How can I, maybe it's honking because there's something dangerous that it's trying to get people around to take attention, take note of, or maybe there's something up ahead that it's trying to avoid. Maybe there's something in there that I need to pay attention to rather than push away. So if you can, sense a little more space in you, that's what helps with the seeing the mind like the sky, because then then there's enough space when a really sticky, emotionally charged thought arises that we can, allow it to be there, because there is plenty of space, actually. So getting in touch with that, actually, I can give this some time and space. So finding a sense of patience, a sense of willingness. Oh, what could this be here to show me? Because none of these things arise for no reason, All of these things have important things to show us and tell us about something we need to pay attention to. And a question from Lily. I think this will be the last question. I became quite engrossed in the image of the road or the clouds and was imagining them in great detail, but was unsure if those images count as thoughts. Yeah, thank you. Well, I think I guess it depends on how you were relating to the images. Like you could visualize a cloud, but then if you started thinking about the cloud, like, oh, it's a big cloud, oh, it has this shape, oh, it's moving in this way. So the danger with every metaphor is that we can get caught in the metaphor itself. So the Buddha talked about his teachings as a finger pointing to the moon. He said, but it's not about the finger. Don't get stuck on my finger. I'm pointing to something much bigger. It's just giving you a direction to look in, but don't get stuck looking at my finger. Look in the direction it's pointing to, right? So with any metaphor, it can happen that we get attached to the finger rather than the direction it's pointing us to. So I suppose if you would get so engrossed in, the clouds, and what about, is this cloud, am I supposed to be doing this, am I doing it right, then that all could be thinking in a way that distracts you from the idea. The metaphor is really just to give us a way to experience how thoughts come through our mind, just like how clouds come through the mind. Clouds go through the sky, so it's really a way to give us some space between us and our thinking. And if the images are helpful, if they help you to have that sense of spaciousness with your thoughts, great. If you start to get caught up in the images of the clouds and sort of bogged down in it, then maybe you let that metaphor go and you can connect with your breath and simply notice your thoughts without having to rely on a metaphor. So thank you all for your questions. There's still really good, juicy ones. And I think we should close. But really appreciate this time with you every day. And I look forward to being with you again tomorrow. And maybe between now and then, you could turn your awareness towards your thoughts throughout the day. See what happens if you keep bringing this awareness into your daily life, not just on the cushion. We'll see you tomorrow. And if you'd like to leave a donation, that would be great. The button is below the video. Any amount helps to support Sangha Live and the teachers. Take good care. Be well.